This is the Strait of Hormuz, a narrow stretch of water between the Persian Gulf and the open ocean. At its tightest point, it measures only about 39 kilometers across. Yet through this narrow corridor flows one of the most important lifelines of the modern world. Every day, massive oil tankers move slowly through these waters. They carry the fuel that powers factories in Asia, industries in Europe, and transportation networks across the globe. Nearly a fifth of the world's traded oil passes through this single maritime route. But the Strait of Hormuz is more than a shipping lane. It is leverage. It is strategy. It is power defined by geography. And along its northern coastline lies Iran. For Tehran, this waterway is not just a natural feature. It is a strategic advantage, a gateway through which global energy must pass. This is not only a story about oil. It is a story about pressure, deterrence, sovereignty, and survival. Because in geopolitics, the most powerful position is not always the largest one. Sometimes, power comes from being exactly where the world cannot avoid you. Geography. Control within narrow waters. The Strait of Hormuz connects the Persian Gulf to the Gulf of Oman and the Arabian Sea. It acts like a funnel, channeling energy exports from the Middle East toward global markets. On one side lies Iran, on the other, the Sultanate of Oman. But what makes this passage strategically sensitive is not just its location, it is its narrowness. The shipping lanes used by oil tankers are far smaller than the full width of the strait. Inbound and outbound vessels travel through designated corridors only a few kilometers wide. This means their routes are predictable, and predictable routes create strategic vulnerability. Iran's coastline stretches along the entire northern edge. In addition, several small islands near the shipping lanes provide observation and positioning advantages. From a military perspective, this is not open ocean. This is controlled space. Coastal radar systems, missile batteries, naval patrols, and surveillance networks can monitor nearly every movement. On a global map, the Strait of Hormuz appears small, but on the geopolitical chessboard, it is one of the most critical squares on Earth. Iran's strategy: deterrence through asymmetry. For Iran, national security is shaped by decades of economic sanctions, regional rivalry, and military pressure. In this environment, the Strait of Hormuz becomes more than geography. It becomes leverage. Iranian leaders have repeatedly stated a clear position. If Iran cannot export its oil freely, others in the region should not expect unrestricted exports either. But this strategy is not based on large warships or traditional naval dominance. Instead, Iran has developed an asymmetric doctrine designed specifically for chokepoint warfare. Fast attack boats, mobile coastal missile systems, naval mines, unmanned aerial surveillance. These tools are not meant to control the open seas. They're designed for narrow waters, where speed, proximity, and unpredictability matter more than size. The objective is not war. The objective is deterrence. The message is simple. Pressure Iran, and the costs of escalation could extend far beyond its borders. In the Strait of Hormuz, geography amplifies capability. The power of tension. Whenever regional tensions rise, global attention quickly returns to one place: Hormuz. Oil prices react almost instantly. Shipping insurance rates increase. Naval forces adjust their positions. Sometimes, even unconfirmed reports of risk are enough to shake financial markets. Why? Because the global economy understands how fragile this corridor really is. Even a temporary disruption could affect energy supplies within days.
Iran understands this dynamic well. Power does not always come from action. Sometimes power lies in possibility. The mere suggestion of interference creates economic ripples across continents. This psychological dimension transforms the strait into more than a physical passage. It becomes a strategic signal. In geopolitics, perception can be as powerful as reality. The paradox, a double-edged strategy. But there is a critical limitation. If the Strait of Hormuz were fully closed, Iran itself would face serious consequences. Its own oil exports rely heavily on the same route. Trade would slow down, government revenues would fall, domestic economic pressure would intensify. A complete shutdown would represent extreme escalation. It could trigger military confrontation and severe international backlash. For this reason, Hormuz functions less as a weapon and more as a warning. It is a pressure tool. Iran's strategy appears calculated: show capability, reinforce deterrence, preserve irreversible conflict. The goal is not to stop global energy flows. The goal is to remind the world that regional stability cannot be enforced from only one side. If sanctions apply pressure from outside, geography can apply pressure from within. Global dependence: why the world watches. The importance of Hormuz extends far beyond the Middle East. Major Asian economies, including China, India, Japan, and South Korea, depend heavily on energy shipments passing through these waters. Europe is also indirectly tied to the same supply chains. If disruption occurs, fuel prices rise worldwide. Transportation becomes more expensive. Manufacturing costs increase. Inflation pressures spread across economies. This is not a regional issue. It is global. That is why major naval powers maintain a continuous presence in the area to ensure freedom of navigation. But from Iran's perspective, that presence tells a different story, one of foreign military forces operating near her coastline. And so the cycle continues. Security measures create suspicion. Suspicion creates countermeasures. The Strait of Hormuz becomes a feedback loop of tension and deterrence. Military reality: small tools, big impact. Iran is not a traditional naval superpower, but chokepoint strategy does not require one. In narrow waters, large fleets cannot maneuver freely. Commercial ships follow fixed routes. This environment favors smaller, mobile systems. Swarm tactics with fast boats, mobile coastal missile systems along the coast, drones for surveillance and targeting. The strategy focuses on mobility, volume, and unpredictability. Direct confrontation remains unlikely, because all sides understand the consequences. Any open conflict in Hormuz would carry enormous economic and military costs. That shared risk helps prevent escalation. But the tension never disappears. It remains quiet, calculated, and constant. Human impact, beyond strategy. If Hormuz were disrupted, the effects would quickly reach ordinary people. Fuel prices would rise, airline tickets would become more expensive, shipping costs would increase, goods around the world would cost more. Families far from the Middle East would feel the impact in daily life. Inside Iran, the consequences would also be severe. Inflation could worsen, the national currency could weaken, economic pressure on households would intensify. This is not just a geopolitical contest between governments. It is a system that affects livelihoods, industries, and global stability. Hormuz is a switch that exists, but flipping it would affect everyone. Strategic patience, power in uncertainty. Iran frequently emphasizes what it calls strategic patience. Avoid direct war, maintain leverage, preserve deterrence. The name Hormuz appears often in political statements, but actual closure remains hypothetical. because uncertainty itself creates influence. If adversaries cannot predict the next move, caution increases. The Strait of Hormuz is a reminder that geography still shapes global power. Even in a digital age, physical routes for energy remain critical. Oil tankers still move slowly through narrow maritime corridors, and those corridors still influence international decisions. Most days, the strait appears calm, but beneath the surface lies constant calculation. Conclusion: the power of position. The Strait of Hormuz is more than a waterway. It is an energy artery, a strategic shield, a diplomatic pressure point. For Iran, it represents both opportunity and